Well, that was bad, but at least Michigan's not Penn State. Let's get into it. Michigan versus USC, 31-13 loss. Right here on this episode of Locked On Wolverines.
You are Locked On Wolverines, your daily podcast on the Michigan Wolverines. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Sunday. We are back and doing it. Locked On Wolverines podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. I'm your man on the ground, Isaiah Hole, publisher of Wolverines Wire through USA Today Sports Media Group. Thankfully, your man at home this weekend, because I'm glad I didn't fly 10 hours, 9.5 hours, whatever it takes to get to and from LA in order to witness in person that debacle. Thank you, first off, to all of our everydayers, those who check out the show every day. Thank you for making us your first listen. Yes, we are doing a Sunday show to start to just kind of dig into it, because, you know, tomorrow we'll have Sherrone Moore talking about it. We'll have all that kind of stuff. But I figured that today we might as well kind of get into the loss. And so the first part, we're going to get into a little bit of what did happen. Not imagining what happened, but more so what did happen. That'll make sense here in a moment. Then we're going to get into, you know, what is, like, where does this team need to go? And that will probably carry over into, I mean, segment 1 might carry into segment 2. Segment 2 might carry into segment 3. I'm not sure that I have, don't know exactly how that's all necessarily going to work, because we just have a lot to get into. So first off, I think I've said, I was going to say some disambiguation. We'll get to that segment too. But first off, what did happen? How or why did Michigan lose to USC? Let's break it down to its bare bones and then start to add different pieces to the puzzle here. So the first part is that Michigan just simply got out physical in both phases, offense and defense. And special teams wasn't good either. I always like to harken back to a lot of coach speak things. And one of the things that Jim Harbaugh often said, I shouldn't say often, he said it a couple times, was that you have to win 2 of the 3 phases of the game in order to win a game. Michigan, essentially, like, special teams, they lost that too. So they lost all 3 phases. You're not going to win a game punting for 30 yards a punt. You're not going to win a game when you're just getting manhandled in the front, really on both sides of the ball. Those do pose problems. Are they massive, massive, massive problems right now? For the moment, they certainly are. Do I think these are long-term problems? I don't really, and we'll get into that later. But they got physically, USC had its will physically imposed upon Michigan. Okay, and that is something that we haven't been accustomed to seeing. In a lot of ways, this felt like the worst loss that Michigan's had in a long time. And by the online reactions, granted, I'm not usually online during or after games, right? Because I'm on the field, then I'm in the press conference. I don't really usually get to see a lot of what people are saying in the immediate aftermath, whereas yesterday I did. So I don't know if, like, the Texas or the Oregon, I mean, even the Indiana game, I was here last year watching the game, but I wasn't really on social media, you know, during the game or after. So I don't really know what the case was there, but seeing just like the vehement, we got to shut everything down. We got to do what Penn State just did to James Franklin, all of that kind of stuff. I don't normally see that type of stuff. So maybe that did happen against Texas or Oregon or Indiana last year, Washington, Illinois. There's plenty of them. But at the same time, we're going to kind of not look at that for the moment. And really the big thing is 2 units that had seemed like they were at the very worst above average, slightly above average. Like the defensive line, I'd say, was beyond above average. The offensive line seemed like it was maybe just like the slightest bit above average through the Wisconsin game, right? Just like slightly. And this was just a debacle. on both sides. Like both sides just not maintaining any kind of integrity, not being in the right gaps. The defense, and we can extrapolate this all the way back to the defensive backfield. But let's start with the linebackers. Bad game for Ernest Hausmann, which is something that we don't often say. Very, very bad game for Ernest Hausmann. Just seemed lost. For a senior team captain, that's the last thing I want to see. The defensive backs also seemed lost. Like the whole time, it was just like they're getting lined up, and you often see the communication and like, okay, you got to shift to go here. This didn't seem like it was like the type of communication of like, hey, you got to get over here because that I'm seeing this and this. This felt like, bro, you aren't lined up anywhere close. Like what are we doing here? Like that's how basically the whole game felt, front to back to front defensively. The biggest thing in this game, ultimately, what if I was to pare it all the way down? How did Michigan lose this game? Yeah, I've seen all kinds of excuses out there. Michigan lost this game against USC primarily because defensively they could not tackle. Way too many missed tackles. We've seen it rear its ugly head a few times this year. Saw it intermittently against Nebraska. We saw it in the first drive against Wisconsin. But generally, they had shored things up. What were we talking about coming out of the second half against Nebraska? Was like, man, incredible open field tackling. This game, it didn't even feature open field tackling. What it did feature, however, was a lot of missed tackles at the point of attack, and then again on the open field, and then usually again beyond that on the open field. If Michigan, based off of what USC was doing, lots of counters, lots of screens. If the tackling itself worked, if you just take all of those moments where Michigan hit a guy right in the moment at the point of attack that they first got contact and got him down like you're usually accustomed to seeing, then we're talking about a completely different game. You could even keep the King Miller 3rd and 26, 49-yard run. But I mean, therein lies the other problem. An inability to be in the right gaps at the right time. That's why this felt like such a debacle, because these are things we haven't seen from the Michigan defense in a long time. 200 plus yards rushing. Last time we saw that was the Fiesta Bowl against TCU. And that felt like masterful game plan by not Sonny Styles. That's an Ohio State linebacker, Sonny Dykes. This was a completely different thing. It did not feel like Michigan traveled 2,000 miles west. They had an extra day of practice. They were at the Chargers facility, and they looked like they had no idea how to play football. Now, I have good news. We'll get to that later as far as that's concerned. But we've got a lot to get into. We just covered just like the basics of the defense. Let's talk a little bit about the offense as well. There's reasons why I'm not as concerned, and we'll get into it. We're going to do that here in just a moment. But before we do, this episode is brought to you by Mazda's moving the game forward. For those who believe it's not just about playing the game, it's about redefining it. There are moments that do more than put points on the board. They move crowds, move culture, and keep moving the game forward. Listen, this week's that moved the game forward, I don't know that why we have a good one. But if I have to go with anything, it would be the Andrew Marsh touchdown, which at least made you feel like you had a chance. You had a chance. Plus, you're seeing it from a wide receiver. And these types of things are things that we aren't seeing a heck of a lot of. So, I mean, just the fact that he is really coming on strong. We'll get into him later, but nonetheless, huge. That's what's needed. The Bryce to Andrew Marsh duo is in effect. So we're going to see more of that moving forward. But when you follow what moves you, the unexpected is only the beginning. And just like there's more to every highlight, there's more to a Mazda vehicle. Mazda, move and be moved. All right, we're going to continue on momentarily. But before we do, there's currently NFL games on right now as we speak, as I sit here and talk to you. And FanDuel has an offer you don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That is right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love how FanDuel, that gives me so many ways to play. I've built parlays. In the same game, I love the same game parlays, tried player props, and even followed the live lines during games. It makes watching football even more exciting when you know you've got a little something extra riding in on the action. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com right now. Download the app, and you can get started. All right. There's no other way to put it than that was a debacle. I mean, that was a terrible, terrible showing. Offensively, there was a lot there, right? There were times where I saw really, really good things from the offensive line. The problem was I saw it on any given play 3 out of the 5 times or 4 out of the 5 times. And it wasn't like there was one common denominator. I know everyone wants to look at a common denominator and say, like, the latest scapegoat is Andrew Sprague. I didn't really feel like he necessarily was the constant culprit. I haven't looked at the PFF grades because I saw a little something bad from everybody at any given point in time. There are times where I was looking at Evan Link and I'm like, bro, what are you doing? And there's other times where I'm like, Evan Link's the only one out there doing exactly what it is he's supposed to be doing. And I felt like I saw that from all 5 at some point. I know there was a point where I was looking at Jake Warnera and I'm like, man, that's the worst play he's ever had in a Michigan uniform. That was bad. So, I mean, it's hard to look at that. And I think, obviously Justice Haynes being hurt doesn't get to his 100 yards, gets 51 yards on, I can't remember how many carries. I have the box score up here. We can take a look at that. Am I on the right game? I am. Okay. I guess it was a little bit different than when I looked last night. I don't know. Oh, net. I wasn't looking at the net. 10 carries for 51 yards. Jordan Marshall performed admirably, though, coming in with 14 carries for 68. Now, no home runs as far as that's concerned, but they carried for about the same average. Justice had 5.1. Jordan Marshall, a few more carries, 4.9. To me, that's fine. Bryce Underwood, not as bad as Gary Danielson would have you believe. Was it Gary Danielson? What was this on? No, Todd Blackledge. Todd Blackledge would have you believe. Not, it's that I was getting kind of annoyed. I can see why people get annoyed with announcers because, I don't often see the games with announcers. I might watch it in replay, but I have it turned way down. I'm not really listening to what they're saying. And to hear just he's just a completely inconsistent freshman who doesn't make good throws. And you look at, here's what his percentage is, 59.8. Oh, it's freshman mistakes. And it's like, no, if you knew anything about what's happened with Michigan, it's drops. He puts the ball usually in the right place. Usually, obviously he had the pick. That was a missed DPI. Hey, Michigan got a holding call on the other side of the ball. So that was something, but otherwise, it's just, I thought that there was a poorly officiated game in a lot of ways. There were a lot of, on both sides, missed opportunities. I know USC, they also got the weird spot foul that kind of didn't make any sense on the backwards pass. But offensively, my main issues come with, again, the line up front not performing up to task. But then secondly, the play calling. The play calling had its moments of brilliance, but they were relatively infrequent. And that first drive, you needed to have a first drive against a potent offense like you were going up against, which didn't even really get that vertical, weirdly. You needed to have one of those drives like Michigan's faced of where we're just going to carve it up and march down the field. They couldn't have a 3 and out. And that's exactly what they did. Just a listless, lifeless 3 and out that looked very uninspired, looked like, what our plan is? We're on the no plan. That's what we're going to do. We're just going off of vibes and YOLO. That's what it felt like. Now, there were moments where some of the play designs, like the one where Marsh came in motion and then he comes back and not Justice, but Bryce does basically a play action. Fakes the handoff. I think it was Jordan Marshall at this point. Maybe it was Justice. I don't remember the point in the game this was. And then throws the screen and it goes for forever, right? Like that was inspired play calling. There were a couple times where you looked at the play and you just kind of went, ooh, where has this been? Like I look on social media and there'd just be a lot of, where has this been? Therein lies the problem. I got a text from Canada Mike. And he's like, why does USC's offense look so simple and effective and Michigan just looks so difficult? And therein lies part of the problem. Now, part of it's the protection, right? Like Michigan is predicated on this idea that it's going to run at you. You can't stop it. And at the same time, like they did an okay job running the football. Ultimately, they did an okay job with it. 109 yards, that's not going to win you the game. But like, they were kind of taken out of running the football as much as they would have liked to. They didn't have the home run hit. They had 33. It was 142 yards of gains, but 33 yards in loss. Obviously, those count. Bryce Underwood getting sacked a few times, not great. But there were moments where it was like, okay, at least it looks like they can run the ball, but they had to get away from it because they found themselves in a heavy deficit and they had to throw the football. So it's Michigan's coaches did not put the players in a position to succeed on the offensive side of the ball. Defense, which is ultimately what lost Michigan this game. It was the execution. USC punted all of twice in the game. I believe once in both halves. And you had opportunities on third down. They were averaging like 3rd and 9 and kept converting time and time again. That's what ultimately cost the game. Offensively, the inability to take advantage of the USC defense and looking nothing like any team that's faced USC so far this year, that's costly because this offense is better than that. Despite the fact that we haven't necessarily seen it yet, and it still does feel in a lot of ways, as much as Bryce does put the ball a lot of the time where it needs to go, and it doesn't get caught for whatever reason, at least you can watch it and say this should be more functional than it is on a down by down basis. Because here's the thing. Bryce Underwood in a loss where the offense felt very inconsistent, 15 of 24 for 207 yards. That was basically like a personal best for any quarterback last year. Now, obviously they ran the ball for 109 yards. That's not going to, having 316 yards of total offense when the other teams got almost 500, not going to cut it any way, shape or form. But it's still a little bit of inability of understanding why they don't target more people that they need to target. Because to me, and this is where some of the play calling could have been better, I'm glad that they went after and went towards Andrew Marsh. 138 yards on 8 catches, long touchdown of 69 yards, only 3 receptions for Donovan McCulley. They did go after him another 3 times. There was the DPI at least 2 DPIs, to be honest, that didn't get called. But they should be going after him a little bit more than they are. Where are the tight ends? Both were in the game, just didn't really feel like they made much of a priority to going after him. The only time we saw Marlon Klein really get the ball, he got smashed for a 5-yard gain. So there are some issues in terms of the idea of like, who do we go after? Now, at least at the same time, I like when I'm looking at receiving, I'm seeing all the names that I want to see. That's the good thing, right? Like I'm not seeing a bunch of like, why is that guy in the game in this moment? But it's still not smart targeted play calling. And that's kind of an issue. All right. So where does Michigan go from here? There's people who want Sherrone gone. They want him to get the James Franklin treatment. They have all kinds of assumptions based off of what the camera shows in any given point in time and during a game, all of that stuff. I have some thoughts about all of that. We're going to get to that here in just a moment. But before we do, most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. When you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why there's Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or on your phone. Monarch is built for people with busy lives. If you put off organizing your finances, Monarch is for you. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever even touching a spreadsheet. You can identify you're not saving as much as you thought. Monarch helps you notice an inefficient investment allocation. And discover forgotten 401ks from past jobs, managing investments, increasing your savings rate, easily reviewing finances with your partner and or financial advisor, keeping a clear view of your financial health week to week. and long term. So don't let financial opportunity slip through the cracks. Use the code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with the code LOCKEDONCollege. All right, so I've seen a lot of people that they're done with Sherrone. I got a lot of texts from people who are done with Sherrone, all that kind of stuff. Listen, number one, I want to tell you, I get it, right? Like, this hasn't been a very inspiring start to his career. But it's like I said to a friend yesterday who was like, I'm done. I'm out. Like I said to them, Sherrone Moore wasn't missing tackles. If Michigan makes those tackles, the game goes different. You have to understand that. And as much as like people will sit and say, well, this kind of performance isn't going to beat Ohio State. How many times do we have to go back and have that conversation? We do it every year. Michigan has some uninspiring performance, some loss that has no business losing. Last year was, Washington or Illinois, Rutgers in 2021 and 2023. I'm sure there was something in 2020, Indiana in 2022, right? Like there's always those moments. That's not going to beat Ohio State. And what have they done every single year? Now, I'm not predicting that Michigan beats Ohio State at this moment because they've got a lot to fix. But ultimately, what happened in that game yesterday? There was some coaching malfeasance, some coaching malpractice. I am with you on that. But there was often that. And Sherrone has not shown that he's Jim Harbaugh. So don't mistake what I'm about to say of me putting him on the same exact plane. But he is in the same job and he has got those, very lofty shoes to fill here. But there was a lot of that with Jim Harbaugh, too, where you look at it and say, what are we doing here? And I know there's people that are going to glom on to any little thing and say that's that little thing that has nothing to do with anything. Right. They show him with a smile on the sideline at some point when Michigan's losing and say that's why you shouldn't be the coach. And, you don't know the context. He smiled after Bryce threw the pick. I don't think that smile was like, oh, my heart. He's doing it, guys. I thought it was more of an exasperated smile. Right. And it's not that these guys like losing. They don't. It's not like that's the constant demeanor. That's not like those are all scapegoats. It's kind of the same thing. Not that in its own little microcosm here, but you start getting into this world where it's kind of like Brady Hoke with the headset, the lack of headset rather. Brady Hoke doesn't wear a headset and Michigan wins. You're like, oh, our coach is so awesome. He doesn't even wear a headset. You know that? Like he's an old school football guy. That's great. And then he loses and you're like, this idiot won't wear a headset. What the heck is wrong with him? Even Jim Harbaugh, for those who act like, it's a stupid Warden Manual didn't give him the proper extension coming out of 2020. These are the same people for the most part who in 2020 were like, I am tired of the antics. I am tired of the obfuscation. I do not care about his little sayings. I want him out of here. Right. Like people have short memories when it comes to a lot of those things. OK, but with that said, I won't say that like, oh, I've got the such a vote of confidence in Sherrone Moore that I think he's going to follow up Jim Harbaugh's tenure with an equal type of success rate. We don't know that. But to act like it's just a complete debacle, this guy came in as an interim coach and won the last 3 games of 2023. He won the last 3 games last year when he had no business doing so. And I understand the offense at times looks stuck in the mud. Listen, I'm telling you, I know there's a lot of you that think that he's coming in and trying to make it more conservative. Nope, that's just the offense. That's just a scapegoat for the difference of what you want and what it is. I have belief that they can fix it based off of things that I know here. But to act like that game was solely on coaching. Coaching played a role, but it played a much smaller role than the inability of guys tackling. Now, I think in terms of I'm talking in-game coaching there. If you want to say there's a broader problem for the team not looking like they were anywhere remotely ready for this game, as well as having kind of some poor game plans, kind of like Connor talked about often, is playing in a phone booth, those condensed formations, and why that's not a good idea against USC. And they were doing it quite a bit. There were times where they had success in it, but Those types of things. That's where, I'm going to have to agree with you. The fact that these guys don't look fundamentally sound on a down by down basis is a problem. I don't know what the issue is there. And I don't think it's solely Sherrone, right? Like Sherrone, keeping in mind, he's kind of the CEO. He's got to be able to be on those P's and Q's. Some of the Harbaugh teams were in the same kind of area where you wondered why they weren't as technically sound at some moments. It was much rarer than what we've seen in the last 2 years, but it was there at times in certain years. And you would hope that this year would be different. So I will agree with you if we were to say, how is it that these guys are so inconsistent? Because we see moments where it's consistent and we see moments where it's not. Now, it is a new world of college football. We've seen coaches like Curt Cignetti. Who would have thought 3 years ago at this time, 2023, that no matter what we thought Oregon was preseason in 2025, that Indiana would be able to go to Eugene and beat Oregon. So coaching can make a quick difference, a quick turnaround. I will say this for Sherrone. He's got a lot of work to do. They've done a really good job in the last several years when either Sherrone was the head coach or he was the offensive coordinator, of having a team that wasn't nearly as good at the beginning of the year. Now we're in the middle of the year, of course. They're 4-2. They were literally at the halfway point. But by the end of the year, by week 12 or, week 14, however you want to quantify it, they're here. And a lot of the Harbaugh years, they would start here and they'd end up here. The Brady Hoke years, they'd start here, they'd end up here. And if you're listening and not watching, I'm putting my hand up and down, depending on, you can understand, figure out what I'm trying to say there. They ended up in those, the Rich Rod years, and they started out 4-0 in the early Rich Rod years, or the second, third years of Rich Rod. They start up high and then they end low. And even in the Harbaugh years, the first 5, they start high, they end up low. 2016, 2018, 2019. 2019, they actually just started bad and ended bad. But 21 through 24, because you have to include 24 in that. They started low and ended up high. Maybe 21 through 23. It wasn't that they started low and ended up high, but they started at one place and ended up in a higher place by the end of the year. So mid-season, bad report card at the moment. They've got a lot to work on. The things that it looked like they probably would have learned or did learn coming out of Oklahoma in the subsequent weeks, looks not only like they forgot them, looks like they're worse off. That's not great. But mid-season firing of Sherrone, no, I don't think that's anywhere close to the answer. Do I think he can fix it and get it at least to the point where you would expect Michigan to be? I do. I really do. But they've got to address some of the things, and I'm sure we'll talk to him tomorrow about some of he addressed the tackling after the game yesterday. I'm sure we'll talk tackling fundamentals, stuff like that tomorrow. So anyway, that's going to do it for us today. We'll be back on Monday. Yeah, I guess we're doing six a week these days. That's what we're doing. Thanks for watching. Thank you for listening. We will talk to you again soon. Peace.